Hey guys, what's up? Today I want to show you my 10 favorite JRPG series of all time. I don't know why I've never done this type of video before. Probably because there's already one called Top 10 Best JRPG Series of All Time. It's actually the very first video I did in English, not counting the slideshows of course. But if you watch that video, you'll see a lot of differences with this one. I mean, I don't know what I was doing back then. I was trying to be half objective, half subjective. I don't know, man. So today you're gonna see the opinionated video as usual, my 10 real favorite JRPG series of all time. And for me to consider a series as a series, it needs to have at the very least 3 games released, especially released outside of Japan. So that means series like this that only have like 2 games are not gonna be in the video. It hurts because you know I'm a die-hard fan of these games. Anyway, so let's begin! Number 10. Persona. I've been a fan of this series since Persona 3 came out, so that's the one that hooked me into these games. What I love the most about Persona is the style and personality in graphics, colors, and music. There's a variety in these in every corner, some to be enjoyable even if you're not really into them. I love the Persona collecting aspects, and each of your party members having their own exclusive to them. While the first Persona games are rough in terms of gameplay and battle system, the P2 duology are such a treat for hardcore gamers. We then got into high school simulators, and while I'm not really a fan of my time in high school, the social links were so much fun to play here. I also like how the last 3 games are basically an easy entrance for beginners considering how balanced they are. And their length is what makes them so memorable as you get to spend more time with all of the characters. Overall, it's an amazing series and an important part of my RPG gaming life. Number 9. Trails, also known as Kiseki. My first love with this sub-series was Trails in the Sky on the PSP, and many years later, its masterful sequel. Now keep in mind I'm only talking about the Trails saga, not the entire Legend of Heroes franchise, but this is just like Persona or Nier for example, it's practically become its own series anyway. Just like with Persona, you get really long games with each entry, which means you truly get to know their large cast of characters and easily pick a few favorites. I'm a huge fan of RPGs with tons of party members, so all of these games were ideal for me. I also really enjoy the music since it's so memorable and easy to remember, though it stands out the most when it comes to battle themes. And speaking about battle, I really enjoyed each and every single one of them as they're basically a fantastic evolution from one another. These are RPGs that feel so complete, so fulfilling and mesmerizing. Definitely among my favorite series of all time now. Number 8. Valkyrie Chronicles. I've played and finished every single Valkyria game in existence, but well, there's only 5 so far. I love them all. I started with the first one on the PS3, which quickly became my favorite. I've always enjoyed a different take on the World War II fiction, and with anime-style characters, emotional and heartbreaking stories, just fuming with the maturity I usually crave in video game stories. But the one thing that stands out like crazy in them is the battle mechanics. These overly creative maps that even their influencers, XCOM, can't top in my opinion. Granted, Valkyria 2 and Revolution were repetitive and didn't have a lot of imagination for this, but the other 3 easily made up for them. I still love those 2 games by the way, and I'll never stop praising Revolution's story. Cel-shaded graphics are highlighted here too, of course. They're beyond gorgeous. Give me any of these excellent RPGs any day and I can truthfully enjoy them just as I enjoyed them the first time. Number 7. Valkyrie Profile. This should be higher on my list, but there's only 4 games and half of them are disappointing. Die-hard fan of Valkyrie 1 and 2, and I actually started with the second one. It quickly became my favorite PS2 RPG of all time, and it's one game I've beaten and completed to death. You know me, I love me some dark, tragic, adult-oriented stories, mature, psychological, etc. That's what I got with the first 3 games. I'll pretend Anatomia doesn't exist since it's merely mobile fan service. Covenant, you know how I feel about it. It's love it and hate it. Great story, unbalanced gameplay, kind of feels like it killed the series for good. Hoping I'm wrong, I wish to see a proper sequel to the first 2 masterpieces one day. To me, it's not only the plots and characters that stand out, nor their 2D graphic gameplay during towns and exploration, it's also their battle mechanics. I always felt Silmeria took a wrong turn that ended up being right. I've praised its battle mechanics dozens of times while also admitting it's just not for everybody. Whatever the case, I'm a big fan of this small franchise, so here's hoping it properly comes back one day. Number 6. Shin Megami Tensei. I started with this series with Devil Summoner on the PS2 because it said Shin Megami Tensei in the title. I knew it belonged to the same series as Persona 3 back then. I really liked the Devil Summoner games, especially Soul Hackers. I've played almost everything from this franchise and there's a lot of variety in there, different gameplay mechanics to choose from. You've got your action RPGs, your turn-based RPGs, your dungeon crawlers in first person, and of course your strategy RPGs, Devil Survivor 1 and 2, which are actually among my favorite games in the entire series. The reputation of this series being hardcore is true, but that's also what makes them great to play, rewarding the player with a strong sense of progress. I also believe the soundtracks are a vital reason for me to love them even more. No need to explain again my preference on dark and twisted stories, so let's continue onwards with the list. Number 5. Tales of. Being a fan of the Tales series since I played Legendia, still my favorite of them all, I met some really unique 2D graphics during the battle system that reminded me of the good old beat-em-ups of the 90s. Fell in love with the music, the story, and of course, its immense character development. Fantasia came afterwards to me and hooked me into the series, but I'm talking about its fan-translated PS1 release. I really love going back to them and see how much they've evolved since Trias moved on after the first one. I've never been disappointed with any of them, not even Susteria or even Destiny, which I think are among the worst. It's just some are better than others, but that's a matter of opinion as always. I love the heck out of this series for their charisma, their immersive combat, and their overwhelming character progression. If there's one thing that truly stands out in them, it's precisely that, their cast of characters. Always a long and compelling journey with them. Number 4. Ys. I wasn't a fan of Ys growing up. In fact, I became one just a few years ago when I opened up again to them. I played Ys 3 on the Super Nintendo and it turned me off for how difficult and archaic it was. Ys 6 was no different, but I later got to appreciate it much more. Ys 7 is the one that got me into the series because it played so well, it was balanced and not brutal like the other two, and most importantly, because it had party members. I still went back to the other games with no playable allies because I started to appreciate Ys even more. Nowadays, I'm a ginormous fan of it. My favorite of course being Lacrimosa, as I felt it became the epitome of the series by doing everything right. I love the fast-paced action as I grew up with mindless beat-em-ups and hack-and-slash games. I like some technical action RPGs too, but I'll choose one of these any given day. The music is also crucially important. Some themes can be so goddamn good, they make you keep going after losing a million times over these challenging RPGs. Same thing with Shin Megami Tensei actually. Now that I've played them all and finished most of them, I can easily tell I like it way more than any other action RPG series out there. Number 3. Grow Lancer. 6 games are there, but we've only gotten 4. Lancer 1 and 6 are currently being fan-translated, thankfully. Heritage of War, the 5th one, was my first, and it's still my favorite. This is a very obscure and underrated series, hidden gems most likely. Being brutally challenging shouldn't affect the reputation, tons of games are tough as nails and still popular. But I guess real-time strategy is not for everybody. I love them for having a wide variety of mission objectives, even though some of them can be a pain in the ass. But having something else to do than kill all enemies really gives these games a strong dynamic burst. Also, the stories can have their own fan service and weebo stuff, but they mostly focus on the dark, political side of things. So I praise the writing on every single one of them. They even offer different routes or endings thanks to your decisions. Another strong point, of course, a role-playing game where your choices actually matter. So there you go, that's why it's among my favorite series of all time, and I hope it comes back one day. Number 2, Fire Emblem. Overrated today, underrated yesterday, but me, I've been a fan since I touched Path of Radiance for the first time. It offered a unique perspective on strategy RPGs that I had never seen before. Story and characters reminded me of other series, including Lancer, so the structure of the plot felt so familiar. I then moved on to the GBA titles, and that was a life changer for me, since I transformed into a freaking fanboy. I was glad to see the series didn't die and was revived with Awakening, but it also went into a different direction in terms of story. However, this is just like the Tales series. Not a single entry has ever disappointed me, at least not in terms of gameplay. These battle features are an addiction of mine. The penalties of the triangle system work wonders. The map designs are very creative and always give the player enough time to strategize. They're hard games, but very friendly when it comes to choosing and training your favorite characters. Permadeath turns off a lot of people, and it pissed me off too, cause I'm the type of guy that restarts the whole mission if someone dies. But they made me come back to these missions with a different strategy too. I'm glad Nintendo still keeps alive this franchise nowadays, even if it needs to cling on waifu simulation. Number 1, Suikoden. Suikoden Tactics was my first game here, and even though it's very different than the main ones, it hooked me up. Of course, it wasn't until I played a horribly fan-translated version in Spanish of Suikoden 2 that I fell in love with the series. How many other RPGs out there offer 3 types of combat, completely different than one another? It keeps evolving from game to game. Each is hard to compare to any other game in existence because of this, and they're even hard to compare against each other. 5 is my favorite because I like the battles a lot, regular turn-based and skirmishes. I also prefer its tragedy and its supporting cast than in any other Suikoden. Can't just stop to talk about the music because I would lose time. Great soundtracks here. Finally, I mentioned before I love games with tons of characters, so yeah, this has been my number 1 video game series for 12 years straight. I don't think another one will ever take its place. Alright guys, the list of honorable mentions will be endless. I have a huge lot of honorable mentions that there's just no point. You guys know already I'm a huge fan of many other JRPG series out there. So, if you think that I missed a series, it's because I didn't miss it. It's because that series is your favorite, not mine. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!